Welcome to my first vegetable garden. In this episode of Growing Seeds Indoors on a Budget, we're going to focus on the seed starting mix. How do you prep it? How do you get it into the containers? The first two episodes were all about the lighting and the containers you use for growing your seed starts. I will link them in the video description. So today we're going to talk about the seed starting mix. It's really important that you follow some basic principles to get started so you don't have problems down the line. So let's come on down to here. You can certainly buy your seed starting mix, and it's straightforward. It'll say seed starting mix on there. It's usually a combination of peat moss, vermiculite, sometimes a little bit of perlite. You don't have to over worry about that. I'm going to show you how to make it, and then I'm going to show you how to set up your seed starting mix. So you can buy it. It can be expensive, anywhere from $7 to $12 for this 12-quart bag. And when you really look at, and here I have 5 tiers going all the way up. So in order to buy the seed starting mix, fill everything I need, it's easily going to be 12 to 15 bags of this. At, $8-10 a bag, it gets really expensive. You can make it much more cheaply. If you don't want to, that's fine. Go ahead and get the seed starting mix. This is what I make. It's really a blend of peat moss and vermiculite. There's a little perlite in there. I'll talk about that, but you don't need that. That can save you some money. Now here's the thing. When you're making it yourself, you want to get that 2 cubic foot, 3 cubic foot bag of peat moss from the big box stores. That can cost you anywhere from $15, if you're getting a smaller amount, to $25. It's expensive up front. You can buy vermiculite. I buy mine at Uline, uline.com. You can get it wherever you want. This is grade 1 vermiculite. It's very fine. That's what you want. Really small pieces. A bag, 4 cubic feet, it's going to cost about $60 shipped. That's a lot of money up front. But when you take the 4 cubic foot bag, the 2-3 cubic yard bag of the peat moss, 2 big bags of both, it really makes so much. It's a fraction of the cost at buying it this way. So you do put more money out up front, but you're going to get, seriously, 8-10 times the amount of seed starting material by making it yourself. And I keep it inside. When you buy peat moss, it's dry. This is really important to understand, that peat moss when dry is hydrophobic. It means it doesn't want to absorb water. If you make the mix that I'm going to show you, put this into the cells, then add water, this just floats, and you have a problem because it can take days before the water seeps in. Vermiculite does pretty good at absorbing water. We're going to do a combination. So how does this work? I take a container. This is considered a part. Doesn't matter if this is a small container or a big container, as long as you use the same measure in both of these, that's considered a part. I take 3 parts peat moss, 3 containers full of peat moss, 1 container full of vermiculite, so it's 3 parts peat, 1 part vermiculite, and I just mix it in to the container, mix it through. It's going to be dry, it's going to be hydrophobic. And then let's talk about the next step of hydrating the starting mix, and then we'll get to filling the cells in the right way. This is 3 measures of the peat moss, 1 measure again of the vermiculite, and it's dusty. Wear a mask if you want to. You probably don't want to be breathing this in. And I just mix it through just real quickly like that. Again, super dry. So if you add water to the dry mix, here's just an example. It's just going to float around on top like that. And you don't want that to happen. It's going to take a long time to absorb. The seed starting mix is going to float, it's going to move around, the seeds can fall down into the containers. All we're really doing is, sort of making a mess, is that you want to mix the water through your seed starting mix. This is obviously overly saturated. I'll show you how we do it in that container. But you want it to be a nice dark brown, have the peat moss absorb all the water before you put your seeds in, before you pack the cells up. It's still floating. I mean, it's just a mess because that peat moss is, again, hydrophobic. It's not going to absorb the water. Here's a better example of how everything is just floating on the water, and you don't want that. Hydrating the seed starting mix is pretty simple. I'm going to show you how to do that. But I want to talk about boiling water. Anytime that you use a peat moss based product. There's more than a 50% chance at least of getting fungus gnats. Fungus gnats lay eggs in peat moss, gets put into these bags. The bags have a little bit of moisture in there, not enough. You know, you still have to hydrate the soil. The eggs survive, they hatch in your grow room, and they're really a problem. So you want to use boiling water. All of my stuff is sterile. I've been taking care of it over the year, so I'm not going to do that today, but in the video description is a link to how to use boiling water to sterilize your seed starting mix. I highly recommend you take a look at it. It's going to really save you a huge headache. And that's coming from my main YouTube channel, The Rusted Garden. Now, seed starting mix should be sterile. We're not worrying about soil life right now. We don't care about the microbes. We do once they get into the garden. But for growing indoors, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, we just want a sterile mix. We don't want fungus. We don't want fungus gnat eggs. We don't want problems. So you would add boiling water to this, mix it up, it'll get sterilized. All right, so here's the process. You can pretend this is boiling water. It should be hot water. You're just going to put in a good amount. I used one measure, and you're really going to reach in there and you're just going to squeeze it and roll it. And you can see that it's getting darker, it's absorbing the water, and we just mix this all the way through. And after it's mixed through, it's going to be this nice dark color. That's what you want. If you squeeze it, no liquid is dripping out. That's kind of the consistency you want for setting up the seed starting cells. Now, that's a perfect seed starting mix. Just the vermiculite and the peat moss. This is perlite. You can add some of that in there if you want. It's not necessary. I do that when I'm making a potting up mix, going from the small seed starts into bigger containers. I'll be talking about that in future videos. And if you take a look here, let's bring it up to the light, you can see this was dry mix, how it's all floating on top of the water. You just don't want that to happen. Not hydrating the mix and not using boiling water really are the number 1 and 2 mistake, I guess, of seed starting, getting the mix prepped. This is what dry mix looks like. So you can kind of see that it's going from this really light color to this nice dark color. All right, here's how you set up the cells for putting your seeds in. Here's a basic 6 cell. Just gently put in the starting mix, move it across, and then this is really important. You want to lightly thumb pack it down. You want to make sure the starting mix gets pressed down to the bottom of the cell. That's how we'll be watering it. I'll show you that in a future video. Water will wick up right from the bottom, keep everything nice and moist, and then you just put some across the top. You create a nice firm base of starting mix for your seeds, and that's pretty much it. Let me just show you one for a larger container. Remember, for the larger containers, that just means you don't have to water it as often. The plants can stay in there longer, and you can grow really most of your transplants to full size using these larger containers. Press it in, make sure the mix gets to the bottom of the cell, cover it over with a little more mix, and then just smooth it out. Sometimes we'll be lightly pressing in the surface depending on what seed we're starting. That just again creates a nice firm base. Other times we'll just drop in the seeds, we'll kind of mix them in, and then we'll come back and we'll press them in. That's the basic setup for getting your seed starting mix made if you want to make it from scratch. Getting it saturated so that it's going to hold water. You want it to be nice and dark. Fertilizing we'll be doing later. I'll show you how to do that. And then you can just set up whatever trays you want, whatever cells you want, and get ready for planting. And they may look something like this. Everything you see growing here has been set up in the way that I'm showing you in this series. And I just set up the cells. These have already been planted. These are 4 cells, smaller 6 cells, the larger 6 cells in the back. I get everything prepped like this, and then I put my seeds in. Please subscribe. I'll be doing a whole series on starting seeds indoors, and I'll continue the series for new vegetable gardeners, getting these out into your garden and taking care of them. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and check out the other episodes in the video description. Thanks for watching.